Altos is brought to you with the kind compliments of Rituals Coffee House.
Good evening and welcome to Altos. By now you'd have had a Merry Christmas, you'd have eaten and enjoyed your festive day yesterday. The year 2025 was a significant one for the Roman Catholic faithful. It was the year of the Jubilee, a celebration which takes place every 25 years. It was also the year when Pope Francis died after a long ailment and a new Pope was elected. It was also an election year in Trinidad and Tobago and a year when crime continued unabated. Our News and Current Affairs program, Altos, discussed all the hot topics in the national landscape. So we invite you this evening to sit back and enjoy as we look back at some of those interviews with me, your host, Neil Parson-Lal, and our other hosts, Roger Sant and Raymond Sims. We begin not in chronological order, but on the issue which touched the hearts of Roman Catholics across the globe, the death of Pope Francis. Joining us in May to discuss her meeting with the late Pope was co-foundress of the Living Water community, Rhonda Maingot. Rhonda, tell us, you met the Pope Francis, not too long after he was elected to the papacy. What was your impression then on seeing him?
Oh, plenty of excitement because he was a new Pope. He had brought a lot of excitement into the church at the time. He had done already some remarkable things and said, you know, he showed the world and was already showing us about that the most important thing was the poor and those on margins of society. So there was a lot of excitement about the Pope. And I took a pilgrimage to to Rome on that time, and I got a invitation to meet the Pope. It was the weekend of Pentecost when he met with the new movements.
Right.
So as one of the new movement leaders, they asked me to meet with him. So it was. But I had to find something to wear. What I remember about that day was flying into a store.
What do I wear?
Yeah, somebody said, come, you have to get something for you to wear. You have no clothes to wear to meet the Pope. So, but you see me in there, they got it for me.
They got something for you to wear.
They got something for me to wear to meet the Pope. But it was wonderful, plenty of excitement,
13 years later.
13 years later, what a gift he has been to the church. Absolutely amazing. And, you know, the journey for the 13 years has been one, I think, of up and down for most people, for people in the church, not understanding what the Holy Father was saying, where he was leading the church, and, you know, what he was saying publicly, and, you know, his whole new way of working with the media, and, you know, it gave a lot of chills to some people. Yeah. But, I mean, the legacy that he has left us is absolutely unbelievable.
But, Rhonda, the mission of Living Water, the Living Water community, for instance, and the teachings and the sayings of Pope Francis, there'll be some strong resonance between the two.
Absolutely.
What do you feel in terms of your own and the Living Water community? How does that resonate with you?
Well, I know that the document I remember that came out from Latin America before he was made Pope, and he had penned that document, and we studied that document in the community. So a lot of what he brought to the papacy, we were living already in our community. Excellent. We had learned, you know, from years after that document came out, we had learned a lot from it, and we had, you know, guided the community in that way already. So certainly, I think the Pope Francis coming from Latin America, you know, was something that we were like brother and sister, you know. His ideas and his thoughts and the way that he was leading people were the same.
Yeah, you already giving life to those bones.
We had already given life to that, and we had already made the journey. But certainly, he has encouraged us and helped us with our mission, you know. As you know, to have a mission, especially to those on the fringes of society, is a very difficult thing. And many people, you know, don't like that, and you get attacked for it, but that's okay, you know. He got that too. So it was comforting to know that the Pope had us on this journey, on the same journey with us, you know. So it was comforting for us and strengthening for us, and, you know, so we could stand up to whatever came. This was important, and this was Jesus in real life for us. And, you know, I think, you know, when we look at his death and the legacy that he has left, he has been another Jesus in the world, as simply as that.
The word becoming flesh again.
Becoming flesh, and he has, and love one another, you know,
Yes.
as I have loved you, love one another, has been so much to the forefront. Of
There's a saying, Rhonda, that people go into the conclave as popes and come back out as cardinals.
That's right.
What would you like to see in the next person who assumes the pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church?
Well, certainly I would like to see, if God willing, someone who would continue the journey that Pope Francis has set for the Church, especially synodality as well. Again, in our community, I mean, we lived that for many, many years. So that's the spirit of our community as well. And, you know, I remember Pope John Paul II, he said that the new movements, the springtime of the church. He kept saying that in the 90s, you know, long time ago. And you can never understand what he was really saying, because at that time the church was crumbling, you know. And he kept saying that the new movements are the springtime in the church. And we can see that, you know, as we continue the journey, the whole culture and the spirituality of Pope Francis was something that is akin to us in the new movements. So it was happy for us. It was happy to know that we were on that path with Pope Francis. Not, of course, being challenged too. It wasn't easy, you know, but many times being challenged, and being challenged for the faithful as well.
Pope Francis died on April 21st, and Pope Leo XIV was elected 2.5 weeks later on May the 8th. The Papal Conclave, which is a process of cardinals gathering to elect a new pope, took place following the traditional mourning period, and on May 8th, Robert Prevost was elected pope, taking the name Leo XIV, marking the start of a new era in the Roman Catholic Church and becoming the first United States-born pontiff to be elected. And in elections of a totally different kind here in Trinidad and Tobago, the country went to the polls in May. Prior to the elections in April, we sat down with General Manager of the Catholic Commission for Social Justice, Father Stephan Alexander, to talk a little bit more about what elections and participation means for us.
Us as Catholics, we are regular citizens of the state, and it's our right to voice our opinions and to participate in all the activities of the life of the state. Now, politics is a social activity, and we are called to involve ourselves in all these social activities, because the goal of politics, as Pope Benedict XVI, recently deceased, would have said, is the just ordering of the society and the state. And so Catholics have a moral obligation, a duty, to participate in the just ordering of the state and of society. And so participation in politics is fundamental.
Your article, you make the point, in fact, in this Sunday's column in the Catholic News, that the Church's mission is to sanctify the world. Yes. And laypersons are best positioned to do that. Can you expand a little bit more on that for us?
I'm not sure I would fully use the categorization as the best persons. The church as a whole is called to sanctify the world, yes. And laypersons are a huge part in that. In terms of where they are placed in life, they actually have a better vantage point to interact in the various organizations and the organisms of the society than, let's say, clergy or religious. And so we get involved where we can. And so the role, for instance, of a priest or bishop is to teach, to govern, to sanctify. And so we do that. We teach, we form consciences. And with that formation of consciences, those who are formed are then sent out so that they would exercise. And that's where the laity plays a really fundamental role, because, as you know, I can't run for an electoral seat. You may be able to do that. I am unable to by virtue of my ordination. And so my work, together with you, is to ensure that you have an idea of what justice is and your role to participate in ensuring a just society.
But we had a situation in Jamaica, for instance, where a permanent deacon, Deacon Ronald Thwaites, was actually a member of Parliament and Minister of Education. Is that counter to what we're saying here?
So, in all things, there are general rules and there are exceptions. And perhaps the exception there, firstly, he's a permanent deacon and not a transitional deacon, not a priest. Right. And so he is, as a permanent deacon, in the world. He lives, he has a family, he has business interests, etc. But with the permission of his bishop, his ordinary, anything is possible. Now, if he's there, particularly as an independent, let's say, and there to voice the view, a bishop might allow that. Generally speaking, however, those in ordained ministries are not encouraged to get in active electoral politics. Now, there's a distinction between the electoral politics and politics as a process, a political system.
And you've linked politics very, very often to the question of justice.
Yes.
Yes. What is that link? Explain to us that link.
The link is that justice for us, from a Catholic theological position, is right living, right relationships. And if right relationships are to take place, and if politics is about the just ordering of society and the state, then politics is about ensuring that there is right relationship amongst all those who live in this particular state. And so the link then, if understood in that way, is quite clear. It is that we work together to ensure that each person gets his due, gets her due, lives in right relationship. And if we have a political system where there is oppression, where there is, let's say, where the political dictatorate, let me correct myself, where the political leaders, those in electoral politics, say that we're going to pursue oppressive policies. And if we don't speak out against that, then we would be failing in bringing about justice, in participating in the just ordering of the society. And so that's where the justice actually is.
A former prime minister said politics has a morality of its own. How do you respond to a statement like that?
By laughing.
By laughing. Okay.
You see, the reality of it is politics is a part of life. Philosophically, political and social are the same thing. And again, as Pope Benedict said, it's geared towards the just ordering of society. If the just ordering of society is that we want to ensure that the dignity of each human being is prioritized, we want to promote the common good of all, politics cannot have a morality of its own in that way, because it suggests then that politics is not about the just ordering or the seeking of the common good of all. And so to that, I would respectfully disagree.
Respectfully disagree. And that's great, because I think it's a position that you articulate that is shared by many. The Archbishop seems to point us in that direction in his conversation recently on a television program hosted here at Trinity, where he spoke about the non-participation of political parties in with the code of political conduct, or the withdrawal of their participation in that code of conduct. What is your take on that?
So I think there's a great irony there, because most of these political parties stand on a platform of wanting to serve and to do good for the citizenry. And if we have something from the citizens themselves suggesting that we want proper ethical conduct in politics, and you who seek to represent us decide we're not participating in this, or if we were once signatories, we are removing ourselves from this, it begs the question, am I actually for ethical political conduct? Am I actually for service of the people who have asked for this? And so it's just ironic, because there is no party promoting themselves as we are against the people. If we are for the people, we should listen to them.
One of the big issues in the lead up to the general election was that of crime. With a rising murder rate and the shooting death of attorney state prosecutor Randall Hector, we had in studio controversial and outspoken Seventh-day Adventist pastor Clive Dottin. And we have seen a lot happening in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in 2025 with mid-February, and we've had a sitting police commissioner detained, released, not charged, a new commissioner appointed, and the Police Service Commission in the middle of all of this, and a lot of the senior officers also in the middle of what has happened in this year. What are your initial thoughts on these developments?
Well, I want to piggyback on what you just said, because, Roger, what is taking place is that I now see the new acting commissioner praising Earl Christopher and promising to build a foundation. The only thing that he didn't say is that she was a relative of Mother Mary, because he praised her to the highest. And that tells me there may be a rethink in terms of the speed at which you allowed a junior officer to arrest a senior officer. Personally, I feel the Police Service Commission jumped the gun, because apparently the DPP has found no compelling evidence to charge her. And I observe a commentator on the Express stating that to have, you know, police officials going back to the DPP 4 times within a specified limited period of time tells something. And all of this is not building confidence in this service at a time when, in spite of the fact that we have a state of emergency, we have 3 people killed yesterday. And I have said before, and I'm going to say it frankly again, that in terms of murders, you have to evaluate murders multiplied by 2 when you have a state of emergency, because it means the criminal element has no respect for your state of emergency.
Looking at what had happened in the service, do you think, I mean, what people are saying, there might have been some kind of uprising or coup within the police service itself for something like this stuff happened? And as you said, they've gone to the DPP 4 times, still no charges laid.
Premature. That was a palace coup. I am certain of that. And then not only has the PSC moved with alacrity, but the PCA in the charging of a top-ranking officer, all right, the allegations made by a junior officer, a sergeant, by the way, very quickly she has been absolved.
Right.
And this same officer was involved in the Brent Thomas Barbados affair, all right, another premature action again. So I am saying that we, in a crisis, I have made a statement, and that statement is that Trinidad and Tobago is moving swiftly on the road to Haiti. When I look at what I know about the extortion racket, I have adopted a child, and that child comes from gangland territory, just about 1 year old. And what I see is that a relative is involved in the extortion racket, not yet 20 years old, getting tens of thousands of dollars. And the extortion racket is moving with speed in this country. And a lot of young people have been recruited. Permit me to say that part of our problem is that we have allowed the gang leaders to show us what to do in terms of recruiting young people in criminal activity, in gangs, in drug dealing. We have allowed that to happen, and we have shown a very snail's pace when it comes to the issue of recruiting young people for positive, proactive activity.
Getting back to the Commissioner of Police, is
Yes.
it a case where we have 2 commissioners of police now? The incumbent being Earl Christopher, and now the acting commissioner of police, because she hasn't been charged.
No, we have 2 commissioners. You are quite right. She has not been fired from the office. I think there's a lot of shame in terms of what has taken place now. And Mr. Benjamin has decided, well, he will go ahead and praise her, because history reveals that today's villain becomes tomorrow's hero. And that may very well be the case in this situation.
And what message do you think this sends to the rest of the region and maybe the world, and even within, in terms of the protective services of Trinidad? Because the police is just one, but we have Defense Force, Coast Guard, etc. What message is this sending? Because it's basically those units, those services, they're close-knit and they're closed to the general public.
Well, the message we are sending to the gang leaders are, you are winning the battle. All right, and we are losing the battle. That is the message. I went to a police station to rescue a girl from a drug lord, and one young police officer lectured me on the bankruptcy of pastors when it comes to mediation skills. So I was supposed to tell her to stay with a drug lord who was guarded by a police and a soldier, and who were in the police station too. That's the closeness of the criminal element to some of our protective services. And I am saying a very serious thing. Nobody told me this. I went to rescue the girl. And then there was a roadblock when I was passing back in front of the station, and they profiled my driver and told us go in the station. So I was literally punished when I tried to rescue that girl, and I rescued her successfully from a drug lord who beat her with a cutlass while she was pregnant.
So a very interesting experience there, Pastor Dottin. You talked about us necessarily possibly losing the battle, at least that's the criminal element may think that.
Yes.
Are we losing the battle as a country? A lot of churches, NGOs, schools, etc. have been doing great work over the years to try and arrest this crime situation, but it seems that we're not making the kind of progress and headway based on the efforts.
Yes, my church, Serval, Living Waters, all these are amazing groups. But the truth be told, when it comes to the issue of gangs and criminality, we are actually losing the battle. And we think now that we will continue to lose the battle. I talked to several citizens on the street who are not just Seventh-day Adventists, but belong to all fraternities, all religious communities. And they think that, some even said it's time for America to take over the country. That is where people's mind, to prevent us from becoming like Haiti. And we need to have the courage. You know, the Emmanuel community had two major projects that I was involved in that was of an interfaith nature. And I think the time has come for us. I want to suggest proactively that we could come together, that is all the churches along with the groups like Living Waters and Emmanuel community, to really adopt young people, to launch a national adoption program where it doesn't matter if you disagree with me theologically, but we all agree that we have to save the community and do better at adopting youth and putting them in positive programs.
Very interesting suggestion, and I'm sure there might be a lot of traction for that to happen.
Well, I hope so.
Yes, and hopefully some of that can happen. There was a very unsettling situation. All murder is terrible and unsettling, but I know it would have hit home for your particular church when the prosecutor, Randall Hector, was murdered, I think, early as night in
outside Stanmore Avenue,
yes,
my church.
Exactly.
Right out there. And he was the one who conducted the last part, because he was a lay leader, what we call in the Adventist community, an elder.
Right.
And he had just spoken about protection, if you please. He was hugging his son. And the doctors, and he was shot while he was hugging his son. And up to now, not one government or cabinet minister has made any comment on that killing. A special prosecutor. 3 judges told a friend of mine that guy was decent and honest. He was prepared to die. You know, the Lutheran pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer stated, when God calls you, he bids you come and die. That guy was a sacrifice, and it must not be in vain. And he knew that he was facing a life, he was engaged in a life-threatening process by pursuing the gang leaders. And he offered willingly. He saw that as his role, as his divinely appointed role, even before he was born. That is how Randall Hector thought.
With crime on the rise and already overburdened, the prison service was under increasing pressure. We spoke with Prisons Officer Joel Roberts about the situation behind the prison walls. Thank you for joining us, Officer Roberts. And tell us about some of the challenges the inmates face behind prison walls, and also the challenges the officers like yourself face in our system.
Firstly, let me thank you for having me on the program. We face a barrage of problems. Just in the interest of time, I will just outline 2. In terms of the inmates, one of the biggest challenges that they face, as you all may be aware, 2/3 of the prison population is remanded. That in itself poses a great challenge to overcrowding. So we have now a number of the inmates not diving too much into the court system. One of the biggest challenges they face is having their day in court. and that's in long incarceration period from the time they are locked up to when they actually get a court date to actually have a hearing, and most of which can't even facilitate their bail. So that's one of the biggest challenges that they face, that overcrowding situation and the length of time it takes for them to go through that court system.
And what about the officers?
Well, as officers, we face a number of problems from the fact that we don't have purpose-built prisons, right? So we are forced now to do what we can within the environment that we are to help ease their comfort, because we are dealing with different personalities that gets up on a morning and, you know, they are waking up with that sort of anger and stuff of being incarcerated, and who do they see? The prison officers, right? And we now have to play that integral balancing act between managing them and managing a system that is in dire need of intervention.
You talked about the prisons not being purpose-built. Is that one of the reasons maybe that there is a lot of trafficking? We hear about reports of cell phones being smuggled into the prison, etc. Sometimes drugs, etc. are found. Is that one of the reasons?
Well, it could be tied in as one of the reasons. If I'm to go from a quote from Father Christo, who would have said that officers operate under, in some cases, the temptation and also fear. You know, that those two things also marry together and pose some of the reasons for trafficking within the system. But yes, because there isn't purpose-built prisons, you find that the normal security, what you'll find in a modern system, where you have actual body scanners to scan persons coming in and out of the prison, that's non-existent at this time. Right? So we need to implement all those things. We don't have functioning cameras and all that stuff inside of there that you can help mitigate and limit some of that trafficking within the system. Yeah.
But despite all the challenges, we know that faith-based organizations do a lot of work with prisoners. Tell us some more about that and how that has helped to improve the situation, or at least keep it maybe at a neutral point.
Yeah, that's an integral part, because I, as a program officer, I'm in that department that actually ushers in the rehabilitative work and the restoration work to inmates. Faith-based organizations play a key role. They actually account for 80% of our rehabilitative work, and that's important. I said on another program that society has to see rehabilitation, has to see reform as everybody's business. Just as the police service says that policing is everybody's business, rehabilitation also is everybody's business. And that helps a lot, because that helping to reform, because 98% of the persons incarcerated is going to be returned to society. So you have to ask yourself, do you want somebody to come to live next door to you who goes in worse than they come out? Or do you want a reform rehabilitative or a more productive citizen when they come back out into society? So that's very, very important, and it's integral. And I want to encourage more persons to come on board and help us in our reform efforts.
So can someone, average member of the public, who might not be with a faith-based organization, can they offer any kind of assistance, any kind of service?
Definitely.
And how do they do that?
All right. If you have a proposal, you can write that proposal to the Office of the Commissioner of Prisons, and we will vet the proposal, see what we call the risk need. We have something that we call the criminogenic needs that address the needs of the inmates, what would have caused them to become criminal-minded, what would have brought them into incarceration, and now we match those needs to the programs to help reform the inmates. So we encourage the public, anybody, a former pope would have encouraged the church some years ago to give of their time, talents, and treasures, and that's important. Those who could volunteer their time, those who could volunteer their treasures and talents, who could teach, who could, we encourage everybody to come on board.
And I guess there's always the need to do more. How can the church, faith-based organizations even up the ante and do more as part of their rehabilitative work?
Again, I am saying that I will expand on that time, talent, and treasures and use that as the jump-off point to see. we need money to do rehabilitation, because at this point we do not have a vault that's allocated to do reform and rehabilitative work in the prison. So we depend on kind donors from the public and stuff. Sometimes as officers, I can tell you, I actually have started budgeting every month out of my salary to assist, because the various programs you may need, stationaries, whatever, and you will assist. An inmate may come and tell you they don't have this, and you will have to assist. So we need all those sort of things. Those who have stuff that they could donate, stationaries, as I mentioned before. Those who, we have a lot of retired teachers. In fact, Deacon Lawrence was a prison chaplain. A couple of years ago, he would have sent out an appeal to retired teachers and stuff to come into the prison to assist with the projects. We get 1 or 2, but we still require a lot more, you know, to help the inmates on that rehabilitative journey. So those who can assist, either volunteer in their time, either volunteer in finance, or treasures, if they have computer systems or whatever, we will accept it.
Right, and finally, we saw recently of the Freedom Walk project from the parish in Barataria, St. Theresa's RC Church. I know you're involved in that, but for our viewers, tell us how that works, and that certainly is something innovative.
Yeah. Well, firstly, on behalf of the prisons, we want to congratulate the St. Theresa's RC and the leadership of Father Godfrey Stout, who would have approached the prisons trying, due to the Jubilee year, as to how could the church get involved as part of the Jubilee year. And so what they did is that they wanted to pay for the release of some of the inmates. That would have been facilitated for low-risk offenders who may have had fines. The church would have raised the funds, and they came and they interviewed the persons, and then they made a decision as to which inmates they will pay their fines for, right, and have them involved in the church. That's thus far they have done 2, and that project will continue next month.
In August, as the country celebrated its 63rd anniversary of independence, Abbot John Pereira joined us on set to share his perspective on the state of the country. "63 years ago, Trinidad and Tobago hoisted the red, white and black for the first time, signaling the start of our independence journey. 63 years later, we have on set with us the Abbot of Mount St. Benedict, Abbot John. Welcome to the set.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
63 years, Abbot. How you feel?
I feel good and I feel bad. You know, there are 2 senses.
Yeah.
You know, you feel that we have a way forward. Independence really has to do with how we assert ourselves, and the fact that we are more and more less dependent on others. And that could be a bit frightful, because in the world, which is now a global village, it is a dangerous path to walk if you put yourself first, as some countries do, and you pay no reference to the other nations, what they have to offer.
Right.
So I think even in the context of independence, we must always be open to the gifts that we can share, that we can offer, and that we can receive. You know, before the independence, we had the failure of the federation, based on the political mathematics of Dr. Williams.
1 from 10
Once
leaves
Jamaica
0.
pulled out, 1 from 10 left 0. And in the Caribbean, even in the much touted game of cricket, where we're supposed to be together as one, there are often tensions. And amongst our small islands, each one asserting its own independence, we could be a little parochial in our approach to life. So we must never sacrifice that openness to the wider in the quest to be alone and independent.
So you said there was good and there was bad. As we look around Trinidad and Tobago today, there's the issue of crime and criminality, the issue, you know, of the state of our young people. What are some of the things that you think we could have done better, perhaps, over the last 63 years?
I think it has to do with nurturing with mentoring, the way in which the seeds grow, the type of soil in which the seeds of our children grow. So I think we do have to spend a lot of time. You know, it's one thing to bring a child into the world, but a child without direction or proper direction could be left independent as an individual and astray. So we need that family support, even in a wider context, not merely in the family circle, but in the school, in the community, in the parish, you know. And I think one of the things that maybe we may have lacked is that nurturing dimension, that presence to these new offspring that we offer the world, you know.
Do you think that we've concentrated so much on our, based on what you said, on our independence, that we've forgotten or not given sufficient attention to our interdependence?
Yes. Yes. So independence could be a dangerous word. It could be a wonderful word. But as I said, no man is an island. We are all interconnected. And we need to, you know, sometimes we give our children so much freedom, so they have that taste of independence, that they don't have the substance to use the independence in a way that would sustain them and help them to grow.
About the Mount St. Benedict, the monastery, the environment of the Mount has been home and really a place where the entire Trinidad and Tobago find solace. Black, white, rich, poor, whatever the religion. And the Mount represents, for quite a lot of people, a microcosm of the wider society that is Trinidad and Tobago. How do you think, or what role do you think the monastery, the Mount, as people call it, has played in nurturing that sense of being Trinidadian and what being independent is all about?
Well, one of the vows that the monks at Mount St. Benedict take is the vow of stability. And that is not just a spiritual vow, but it has practical implications. That once you take a vow of stability, and the monastery as a whole has taken a vow of stability, we are rooted in a particular place, in a particular culture, in a particular geography, in a particular history. So we are rooted there, regardless of where you are born. Once you enter into the monastery and you take the vow of stability, you become part and parcel of the earth, the culture, the place. So when people visit the monastery, they feel a sense of welcome, and that has sustained. We have had it from all the races, you know. We have many chronicles of very large pilgrimages of persons of East Indian descent after they came here through indentureship, looking for a place to find welcome, a place to root their own spirituality, and to such an extent that the superior at the time, the abbot founder, had made one of his monks take up Hindi so that he could communicate, you know, with the indentured laborers in their own language at the time, because many of them couldn't speak English. We have the whole host of Africans who continue to come to the monastery, where they find a sense of rootedness and a place where they feel welcome. And hospitality has been a key to the monastic spirituality, where we are welcome to all.
Bishop Abbott, sorry, perhaps I hope I'm prophetic. Today, this year's celebrations, we don't have a parade, but we have a day of reflection, a day of prayer. One prayer for the nation, what would that be from you?
Well, I will go back to the prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8, where he says, "You have been told, man, what the Lord wants. To act justly, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with your God." My prayer for the nation on this particular time would be for us to rediscover the quality of humility, both within and as a nation.
I think that's a good place for us to end today. Abbot, we wish you and the monks all the best for independence, another 63 years perhaps with us. And we know the monastery has been that place. It's the Abbey of Exile, is it?
The Abbey of Our Lady of Exile.
Our Lady of Exile, the place where so many find comfort, and it truly is a symbol of our independence here in Trinidad, where every creed and race certainly find an equal place on the mount.
And from the abbot at Mount St. Benedict, we go to the rector for the seminary, Father Jason Boson, who spoke to us on Altos about the work being done by the St. John Vianney and Ugandan Martyrs Seminary at Mount St. Benedict. We learned that it was more than just about training young men to become priests. Let's take a look back. This weekend in our Archdiocese, as you've been reminding us, every fourth Sunday of Lent there is a special second collection to support the seminary. Tell us a little bit more about this collection this weekend.
So this collection is taken up to support the operations at the seminary, which entail the paying of the staff, the lecturers, the upkeep of the seminarians, and all the expenses that are associated with the seminary.
Now, when people think about the regional seminary, I think most, if not every Trinidadian has been up to Mount St. Benedict and would have passed the building. But when we think about it, we think maybe of the building and the seminarians who are enrolled there on their way towards the priesthood. But I'm sure there's much more surrounding the seminary. Give us a look at what else there is, what other architecture is there in support of the seminary.
Behind the scenes, you have the actual running management of the seminary, which entails the setting up of the administration. The administrative part of it is very demanding because the seminary is run like any ordinary business. So all of that has to be conducted, and it's very demanding, but it helps the seminary to run more efficiently and more productively.
And over the years, the courses for the average layperson, those courses have been introduced under the ambit of the seminary? Yes.
So the seminary focuses on not just the formation for men for the priesthood, but it also focuses on the formation of the laity. Right. So any person who is interested in studying at the seminary can do so. Male, female, you don't have to. So, and there are courses the courses are then tailored for everybody to grow in a deeper understanding of the faith. The only problem that we face right now is that the courses run during the time that people are working. Right. So we're trying to see how that can then be moved to like a Saturday on the evenings, so that then more persons may be able to access the courses at the seminary.
And in terms of men who are training towards the priesthood, give us an update as to the numbers and the balance of foreign men versus the locals.
There are 19 men at the moment who are training to be priests at the seminary. And of that 19, there are 4 local Trinidadians. But there are about 10 men who are studying for the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. So it means that we have 2 guys from Cameroon, we have a couple of guys from Kenya who are studying for the Archdiocese. So when they are ordained, once they are incardinated in the diocese, they remain here. And then we have about 9 other men who are studying for different regions in the Caribbean. So for Suriname, we have 1 guy. We have 2 men studying for Mandeville in Jamaica, and we have 2 guys studying for the Diocese of Roseau in Dominica. So it's a Caribbean intake at a Caribbean seminary, in fact.
Right. So for the ones who are studying, who are from outside of Trinidad and Tobago, but studying for this archdiocese, is it that the Archdiocese of Port of Spain will pick up their costs?
Yes, so once they have been accepted to study for the diocese, all their costs is then taken care of by the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. And Go ahead.
I was going to ask you the next question. What on average will it cost to keep someone in the seminary, to keep a seminarian enrolled in the seminary on an annual basis?
A seminary formation is expensive business. So it takes about $75,000 a year to be able for each seminarian at the seminary. It entails the men do a degree at the university, so it entails their tuition at the university. It entails their general upkeep. We get them a stipend, room, board, because it's a full-time endeavor. And in terms of having we have an in-house psychologist who is on retainer. The managing of the kitchen is a huge venture. And as I said before, the administrative bit of it, which entails the operations of a board, and all that entails with running the seminary.
Right, so certainly a lot more happening than will obviously meet the eye.
Yeah.
Final question, Father. I think during this Lent, and it may have happened before, you're seeing some of the seminarians going out into missions, etc. Is that something new, or is that something that has always been part of their formation?
Yes, it has been a part, but the idea is seminarians are formed as missionary disciples. So as we express that more concretely, is to form the seminarians who then become priests as missionary disciples, men who would be willing to go out and form and make disciples. So part of that is digital discipleship. So all the work that you see them doing on social media, but also concretely going out and being more present to God's people.
In September, we turned our attention to the wider issue of education at Catholic schools. And joining us was the newly appointed Vicar for Education and CEO of the Catholic Education Board of Management, Father David Can.
Father, let's get right into it. You are the Vicar for Education. What's going on in our education system with regards to the Catholic Church?
Well, regards to the Catholic Church, what is happening at this moment is a whole reset. So if I use an image of your cell phone, when you take your cell phone and you hit reset, it wipes clean, and then you start to load up the new information again. So that's exactly what we're doing with our educational system. We are resetting it to load up the new information. Right. Using technology, it's a wonderful world, introducing AI to our classrooms and focusing heavily on literacy and numeracy.
All right, so Father, you are the first Vicar for Education in this Archdiocese?
Well, the title Vicar of Education has been used before in Archbishop Anthony Pantin Day. So the persons who used to sign as Vicar of Education is Father Pedro Valdez.
Right, he was a Spiritan, I think.
A Spiritan, and Father Hezekiah, Regional Hezekiah, of happy memory both.
Yes.
Well, yes, but the Vicar of Education, it's more than what they do, because it's really forming the strategic leadership for the whole Archdiocese, putting together the mission and vision of the Catholic Church, keeping Christ at the center, and bringing the gospel values to all.
All right. But you're also wearing another hat, which is CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the Catholic Education Board of Management, which is more of a more hands-on operational type. How are you marrying those two?
Well, the two complement each other, because the vicar focuses on the strategic leadership for the whole Archdiocese, whereas the CEO of CBM is meant to ensure policies, procedures, the running of the school, it is functioning the way it ought to function as a Catholic educational body, which is holistic development.
All right. Now, before the school term started, you sent a letter out to all those involved in education, the teachers, the principals. How has that letter been, received? How is it?
Well, for those who have given feedback, so I've been visiting school, those who have been responding to the letter says it was a sense of hope, that they recognize that they are not alone, that they are supported by the CBM. It is the reset, as I talk about, really ensuring that the child is at the center, and also for the teachers to recognize that they are our hope. They are the hope. This is also a Jubilee year.
Yes.
We are all pilgrims of hope. So it's an opportunity for our teachers to see themselves. They are a hope for our children, not for the future, but for the present.
All right.
Because we'll have no future if we don't have a present.
Right, agreed. So we're 2 weeks, as I mentioned, into the new school term. One of the issues that has been coming up, of course, is school violence.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are that if we have a full complement of teachers, if we really focus on loving God's children as a document, as teachers see themselves as hope, it will curb the stem of violence. So yes, I do see that we need a short-term measure, but it's not to be a permanent measure by the introduction of police in school. The very good news is, although it went out on a daily newspaper, a list, I must say, although some Catholic schools were listed there, we actually have no police in these schools. In fact, what we do have, and it was done even before this introduction of police in school, normal patrol. And I don't have to tell you the areas. You can, you can name it yourself, which always had police patrol.
But there have been incidents of school violence in Catholic schools, correct?
Yes,
I mean,
there have been. But we have to follow the data. So we cannot use a one-off incident and say we need this. We have to really look at the data, look at the situation, the circumstance, what has led to this particular violence in the school.
You mentioned that you've been going around to the Catholic primary schools, correct?
Yes.
Or as well as any Catholic secondary schools like Belmont and...
Yes. So my goal is, in this first year, is to visit all the schools.
How much we have?
118 primary schools, and the CBM manages 6 secondary schools.
Right. Okay.
So I have visited so far 1 secondary school, which you happen to call the name St. Francis RC, which is right next door. And likewise, I'm going to the further end of the country first. So I was at Moruga.
Okay.
So I started at Moruga, and I'm making my way back up to Port of Spain. Yes.
So the last will be first.
Yes. Yes. So following through scripture, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. But with that in mind, it's really because it's to really find out what is happening in our school. A personal one-on-one with principal and teachers, that they know that the CBM cares, that they will be given the support necessary for our schools to excel. I know the newspaper carry a lot of negative news about our school badly performing, but no one asks the deeper question, why are they badly performing? And when you find out the reality that is happening in the school is many of our schools, I'm not saying this because it is our duty, but many other schools who refuse children to come to their schools, the Catholic schools, we accept them and we work with them because we firmly believe in holistic development. Yes, academic performance is a priority, but it is not the be-all and end-all.
Are we still having issues, like I mean, even when I was growing up going to school, are we still having issues of tables and chairs and desks and not enough? I mean...
Yes, so some of the schools, that is a situation, because what has happened is the factory that produced the furniture during COVID time, they closed down and they haven't reopened. So actually, at present, I've reached out to some corporate sponsors to help sponsor furniture for some of our schools.
Okay. Another question I'd like to find out from you, Father. are there any schools, for example, St. Dominic's RC in Penal, I think they had to rebuild. Do we have any other schools in that same situation?
Yes, well, the other school is Granville RC.
That is
Yeah.
south or central?
That is deep south, as we say, heading to Citrus.
Okay.
Yes, so it's a similar situation that the school has occupied the community center. So we do have the land space to rebuild both schools. So we're in the process, but as you know, with change of government, etc., the process is slow. But we are working with the government to see how soon we can rebuild both schools.
Both schools, St. Dominic's and Granville.
Granville, yes.
Well, Father, we're running out of time. Time is going. Is there anything else you'd like the viewers to be aware of?
Well, it's really a plea, because the reality is our Catholic school has served this nation. We continue to serve this nation, and we have many people who have passed through our institution and are very successful. I'm making a plea that they adopt a school. Yes. It's not about religion. It's about the furtherance of education and loving God's children.
Good.
So I'm asking our business partner with our school to educate our young people and really love God's children.
And if anybody wants to assist and to partner with a school, who to contact?
They can reach out to the CBM. They can reach out to yours truly, myself, at the CBM office.
Good.
In October, the government presented the national budget, and our guest to help us understand some of the measures in the fiscal package was our independent senator, economist, and favorite Catholic news columnist, Dr. Marlene Attzs.
There was a deliberate attempt, I think, by Minister Tanku and the government by extension to essentially extend the goodwill that, they spoke of on the campaign hustings, to extend that goodwill to the population. So when you read the narrative behind his message, it was really about, people first. You say, the budget is not just about fiscal policies and taxes, it's about people and being people-centered. So there was that narrative and that general tone. So very early in his presentation, he announced the dollar reduction in the price of super, and of course the country erupted because that was music to many persons' ears. And then he went through some of the fiscal measures and the other measures that were being put in place. And I think the reality of that, I always say that the devil is in the details, but the devil kind of reared his head by the second and third day, because I think then people realized that what they won in terms of additional zero-rated VAT items, some of which are more consequential than others, and what they might have won in terms of the dollar reduction in the price of super gasoline, and what they may have won in terms of, bringing in older vehicles, then, I think people started to do the kind of hang on a moment sort of thing, because there was the landlord surcharge, there was the excise, there were the excise duties, there were the container duty, the container fees going up, there was the environmental levy, which is one of the things that I just want to flag. A 5% environmental levy, I am all for it, because I think that we don't preserve our environment. But a 5% levy on single-use plastics, that means that everything that you essentially use when you go to your favorite fast food restaurant, and we're not going to do free advertising on Altos, but when you go to your favorite fast food restaurant, those plastic forks, etc., those are the things that are single-use. So when it's a 5%, yes, some will say that this is an opportunity for persons to transition to biodegradable, to plastic, to wooden, reusable cutlery. But think of the lady who provides lunch, who makes 10 lunches or 20 lunches, as the case might be. Think of the doubles vendor, who you go and you buy a doubles and a red solo and you pull a straw. That is going to impact. Now, they may not import it directly, but the distributor, the wholesaler from whom they buy it, the prices then go up, and ultimately it trickles down to us as the consumers who go to the supermarket, who buy the doubles, who buy the fast food, who buy all of these things. So in a sense, there was a giving and a taking, and the devil is in the details. Now, as we go into the budget debate, starting on Friday with the opposition leader, and then next week, more purposefully, the different government ministers are going to go through the details of their specific remits. I think that is where more information is going to come. But certainly the headlines, and we would have seen some prices already going up literally in the middle of the night, because these are manufacturers, these are producers, and certainly for those who consume alcoholic beverages, even the non-alcoholic beverages produced locally, the price of all of those would have gone up because the excise duties are already in place. So there is a lot to unwrap, and I think the net impact, the balance that will come out, I think we will see that over time. But if you're renting, for example, I quite suspect that if your landlord decides to follow the directive given by the government with respect to the surcharge and voluntarily register, because this is a voluntary basis. It's not like the property tax, where once you're a homeowner and your electricity bills and utility bills are in your name, there's an easy way to track you down because you are in fact the homeowner. This is now on a voluntary basis. So I have retired, as I said at another fora, I have retired. My children have left home, so there's empty nest, and I decided, well, to supplement my income, but also to provide me with some company, I decided to rent out 2 rooms. The idea is that I now have to go and register, pay a one-time fee of $2,500, and then declare to the government how much rent I earn, and based on how much I earn, whether it's $20,000 or below or above, they will then charge me accordingly.
And for Granny who does that,
yes,
it then impacts how much she can collect in pension, does it?
Absolutely. I think ultimately that is going to that is not immediately obvious, but that is one of the devil in the details, yes.
One of the things that it was, of course, a huge, measure of relief for public sector workers was that 10%. But when I looked at the figures, there is no provision in the budget details to pay that 10%.
But I think it will be paid, and I suspect there are a lot of details that aren't in the estimates of expenditure. So all of these things over time. And of course, that brings us to our deficit. If you can kind of fast forward to the deficit of just over $3 billion. I think, for example, if the back pay, which is just over $700 million, plus the recurrent expenditure, once the 10% is agreed to, and from Minister Tanku's tenure, the directive has been given by the Prime Minister, so it's no longer if, but simply when. And I think there was a conversation around by the end of this year. So all of those are going to have to feed into that $3 billion, and it's going to have to feed into the government's expenditure, which takes us kind of naturally, we can segue into a conversation around the debt and the deficit, etc. And, many persons say, oh gosh, another deficit budget, but deficit budgets aren't by themselves bad things. It's, and the analogy I use is, if you're buying a house or you're building a house, you may go to the bank and take a loan. So you've incurred debt, but it's an investment that you're making. So if the expenditure that the government is incurring that is above, so the deficit, just to remind our viewers and our listeners, the deficit is really the difference between what government earns and what they spend. And for the last 10 or more years, we've been spending more than we've been earning, and that is what we call the deficit. So the deficit is not necessarily a bad thing if the over expenditure is being put to productive use for investment purposes. I made the example of a house. Now, if you incur debt to go and buy clothes, that is not an investment. I mean, it might look cute when you're out the road, but it's not an investment that is going to bring a return to you. So we have to look and see, hopefully this expenditure, the over expenditure and the incurring of the debt, and our public debt is close to 80%, which is a little concerning, is really going to be used, particularly for the non-energy sector, to help fuel economic growth.
From the national budget to the burning issue of children, the month of September is observed as Foster Care and Adoption Month by the Children's Authority. We spoke with 2 officials of the Children's Authority on the issues.
In September every year, we promote foster care and adoption. We encourage persons to open their hearts and home to consider foster care, as well as for adoption. We do consider persons to consider adoption as an option. So we really want to promote that. It's a good way to do charity at home. So a lot of persons don't know about foster care and adoption.
So tell us about what is actually foster care.
Yeah, so I always start by saying foster care is not adoption.
All right.
People hear the two, but they're very different. Foster care is temporary, adoption is permanent. So when we say temporary, if a child is coming into foster care, we are still trying to place children back with their families if possible, because we feel families have a right to their children and children have a right to their families. So as a foster parent, you are stepping in temporarily to provide a safe home, a loving home for that child while we continue to do our work in the background.
Okay, so a question I have is how many children are in the foster care program right now?
So right now we have 160 children, and that includes kinship foster care, because recently we have the power to approve relatives to care for their children. So you could be a sister, brother, aunt, uncle, grandparent, and we help support you if you're struggling or if that child has any sort of child protection concerns. But we really need more foster parents. Every day I get calls for placement of children because you see the headlines every day. There's so much going on, and we just don't have enough foster parents. So that's why, as a culture, we tend to rely on children's homes. And whilst they are trying the best that they can, ideally, children should be with families.
Or people who are willing to be foster parents.
Yeah.
Can I be a foster parent?
Yeah. So you can be male, female, you can be a couple, you can be a mother, a daughter together. Once you have a safe space and love in your heart to provide to that child for that period. Every foster parent has an opportunity to state their preference, whether they prefer babies, boys, girls, siblings, teenagers. So it really is what your experience, because if it is that you're a single male and your experience is bringing up a daughter.
Right, okay.
Your experience, you know girls, So, but remember, we aren't just leaving children with foster parents. We are continuously monitoring. We are reporting back to the court for the safety of this child. So we are involved.
Okay, so the biggest difference between the two, foster care is a temporary arrangement. Adoption, however, is permanent. Excellent. So adoption involves that transfer of all of the legal rights and responsibility of the parent to a child that's not biologically theirs. All right? Foster care, as I mentioned, is a temporary arrangement. So that child may be with a foster family for a period of time. It could be as short as a few weeks, as long as several years. So it does vary. But once it is a child has been adopted, that child is legally belongs to that new family, that adoptive family.
And who can adopt a child in Trinidad and Tobago? What are the qualities needed? What is the criteria?
So any person, whether it's a married couple or a single person, can adopt. The application forms are available on our website, ttchildren.org. But it's not just a matter of filling out the form. There's an application process. So part of it starts with the application form that has to be completed, but it also involves interviews with our caseworker, psychological assessments, security background checks. Additional documents are required, such as a medical and a police certificate of character. All of that information is compiled. It's submitted to our adoption committee before a person can be approved. Oh, I also forgot one step. The suitability of the home assessment is also done. And all of that is taken to our committee, and then you're approved as a prospective adoptive parent.
But is that a thing in Trinidad? I know we have children who go and stay with auntie. We have children who go and stay with uncle. But have we moved to the point where we have a pool of parents waiting to adopt?
We do actually. A number of persons have been waiting to adopt. To speak to that arrangement that you have with a child going to stay with auntie and so forth, you can actually formalize those informal family arrangements. Or let's say, for example, because that's part of our culture, a lot of the times, auntie, uncle, granny, somebody in the community, that's pretty common. What you can do is formalize that. So that child who you've been taking care of all these years or however long will now have all of the legal rights that come with it. So whether you're talking citizenship, whether you're talking inheritance rights, because that child is now legally your child. So that's an open adoption, and that is where there's a pre-existing relationship between the biological family and the child and the adoptive family. But then there are also that pool of persons you spoke of who are waiting to adopt. These are persons, there's no child specifically that they're looking for. They would have applied, they told us the profile of a child that they would like to adopt, and they're awaiting being matched. Now, there is a big challenge with that because there isn't a pool of young children readily available to be adopted. And the vast majority of persons who are looking to adopt prefer a younger child that they can nurture and raise as their own. And unfortunately, we do not have a large number of young children that are available for adoption. So many persons who are approved and on the list have been waiting for a number of years.
So who do we have waiting for adoption then?
We do have some slightly older children, preteens and teens, that have been freed and are waiting adoption. But many times, like I said, persons prefer younger children. Some of these children are also part of sibling groups. So, and we try as best as possible not to split the sibling groups. Now, we have had sibling groups that have been adopted, but it's always a little bit more of a challenge, as most persons may want a single child to adopt, or sometimes no more than 2 children, and you sometimes have large sibling groups.
You said the child has not been freed for adoption.
Correct. So, freeing a child for adoption is a legal process. So in order to place a child for adoption, you must have parental consent from the biological family, both parents. Whether daddy's name is on birth certificate or not, efforts must be made to obtain the consent of both parents. If it is we don't have the parental consent, there's a process that we have to go through in order to have the child freed by the court to be available for adoption. So many of the children in children's homes, for example, they're not orphans. They have parents. Some may be more or less, some may be involved. There may be steps being taken towards reintegration. But many times when you approach some families, even though they're not able to care for their children, they're not ready or willing to relinquish parental consent. And it's not an easy process. You can't just go to the court and say, well, these people don't want to give consent, but they can't take care of the child. The threshold correct. The threshold is higher. So that's why sometimes there are children who are in residential care for a number of years, but they're not available for adoption.
Our final interview for 2025 was with His Grace Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon. We sat at Archbishop's house, talked a bit about the state of the nation, what the Jubilee meant for Trinidad and Tobago, and where he saw us going in 2026.
I had been bishop in Barbados and St. Vincent, 2 relatively small dioceses, and that was a real nice fun and a real a good laboratory in the sense that I would do something with St. Vincent and come back to Barbados and do a similar thing and take what Barbados did back to St. Vincent and we move it back and forth until it got to a place where it was sound. And so we had the advantage of mirroring. Here, it's different. Like confirmation in Barbados, I could sit all the confirmation teachers around my table. And we could make a decision, half year, half semester, we come back, we could change, at the end of the semester, evaluate and plan next one. Here, you can't do it's that, different. So big stretch, big learning, big understanding of what it requires for the governance of a large diocese. And it's a really different skill set, different view, different understanding. My first years between December 27th, 2017 and March 13th, 2020. That's COVID, the day. Pre-COVID. The day, no, that was the day we met and decided we had to close churches and schools. So between that first phase was my immersion phase. And I literally put myself into everything archdiocesan. I visited all parishes. In the first year, I visited 90% of parishes. I visited a lot of the schools. I visited every kind of school, rural, urban, big, small, primary, secondary. So I pulled together people in education, in the parish ministry. We had a group of parish priests that would come together and think together what do we need? And we did a lot of deep thinking and a lot of work that kind of set the stage. We did a pastoral plan by 2019, January. We launched a pastoral plan. So the whole of 2018 was planning. Lots of deep listening. Then March 13th came. March 13th, 2020, we closed parishes, we closed schools, we went into COVID. That's the second phase. In COVID, we did 3 things, and we did, or 4, really well, I think. First was we had to create a lifeboat for the schools, because no education is not an option. And so we pulled every IT teacher from a secondary school into one group and said to them, build a life raft out of whatever materials schools would normally have. And let's just start.
And let's see where we can start.
And some interesting things happened. So a group from primary schools, actually started going to television and recording. They got a little studio somewhere. They record and put lessons on every single day for COVID on Channel 4.
Channel 4.
And that was really, Catholic News printed work material every week. And between those 2, we built the life raft using technology. So Microsoft Suite we use all kinds of things to build the life raft and keep education going. At the same time we did that, we had to figure out a way to do church. And we did some really innovative stuff during that time. So the first thing I did was I went to Mass every single day with a camera.
Right.
And I moved Mass from my normal 5-7 minute homily on a morning and a 15-minute homily on a Sunday. I moved the weekly into a Sunday homily, and my Sunday homily, I moved it into a celebration homily. So, because people were asking for teaching. And I took the Bible and all the texts for Mass, and I did I would say, discipleship formation for the people of God. I'm still meeting people in Trinidad, in St. Lucia, in Jamaica, anywhere else I go, who are saying to me, I followed you through COVID. And it really has made a big impact. So that was number 2 in COVID. Third thing I did in COVID was we had to feed people, they were starving. And we mobilized parishes to feed people. The government mobilized and gave money to churches to make sure people got fed. And we mobilized and we went to nook cranny everywhere to make sure that people in all communities got enough to keep them going during the COVID time. That was a whole eye-opener in terms of what poverty really looked like in the country before COVID actually started. And then in COVID, the hairdresser, the plumber, the electrician, who was seen about their business, now had no money. And were diving into significant poverty, evaporated all their savings, etc. The fourth thing we did in COVID was all the leaders of the church, religious leaders, from the heads of commissions in family life, etc., and then in the chancery and ecclesial communities, we came together. It was 40-something people, and that was when I did my deepest learning. First meeting, my thought was, well, we have plenty time now. Let's do a real deep plan. What do we actually need to get done so when we open back, we're up and running? And at the end of the first meeting, 3 ladies called me independent and said, Bishop, you're not listening now. We can't think right now. You got to slow down. All right, so next time I slow down, painful to me, painful. Put on the brakes now.
Yes.
You're not hearing us, You had to slow down. By the third meeting, I pulled a group of them to work with me on what the agenda should look like. And that, for me, was my turn to synodality before Pope Francis had actually
talked synodality
as a thing.
But out of that experience, I remember we getting from you the need to concentrate on hymns, homilies, and hospitality. After that, we had the synod experience, and now we're closing off the jubilee. So we've had these experiences.
3 things, yes,
of calling for a new church, so a new way of being church.
So the hymns, homilies, and hospitality came out of the first phase of the first pastoral plan. as a way of renewing the parish and making the parish fit for purpose for the average Catholic who is coming, who wants a good experience. Everybody wants an experience these days. And how do you create a good parish experience? Well, hymns, harmonies, hospitality. And so that was our first wave in. But then when we went into COVID, of course, that went dormant. Bounced out of COVID at the same time, Pope Francis called for the Synod and Synodality. That was in 2021. But as we bounced out, we went back to hymns, homilies, and hospitality. That Synod and Synodality brought something to us that was precious. While we were listening as leaders, we then did this deep listening of the whole church. And when I got the synthesis, it was 10 o'clock one night, and I did the foolish thing of reading it at 10 o'clock at night. And I was depressed for the entire night.
Be careful of what you read before you go to bed.
You know, next morning I got up, I said, no, I was tired. Let me read it again. I'm fresh now. And I read it 7 times before I heard it. And what I heard was the people of God love their church, and they want a relational church. And the church right now is not relational. And the church has hurt and wounded many people because we are not relational, and because people expect from their church a higher level of relationality than they receive from other institutions.
What did that do to you as Archbishop of Port of Spain?
I tell you, I went into depression first. By my 7th reading, when I saw, besides the war of complaints, or below the war of complaints, was really an aspiration for a different kind of church. Once I got that, I was good.
Okay.
And because of the listening that we had started, we then slowed down and started practicing listening in the leadership group. And we did that for a year. Brought in all kinds of different people and listened and practiced what that meant as leaders of the church.
Do you think we are, or how much closer do you think we are to the reconstruction of that relational church?
We are on the way.
We're on the way.
We're on the way.
What did the Jubilee teach us? What are the lessons coming out of the Jubilee? We're closing off on the Feast of Holy Innocents.
So don't think that synodality ended and Jubilee began and we closed it off.
There.
We use synodality as a way of being church. And we've used synodality to frame up the Jubilee. And so you have to see the Jubilee as a continuation, a pause, but a continuation at the same time. In the Jubilee, we had people moving in this diocese like I have never seen before, any single time. The times I went to Tobago, 2 or 3 times a day I was in Tobago, they had pilgrims every single time. Odd weekends. That had nothing to do with me being there.
And during the week.
Yeah, odd weekends and people just going. And they tell me during the week, during the weekend, whenever it is, pilgrims kept coming to Tobago. And every sacred site has had a similar thing. I've asked the sacred sites write up a reflection on what their learnings were, what their experiences were, and what the graces of this year were at the sacred sites. And I think that is going to be a beautiful story for us to tell.
It is.
Then we had the Eucharistic Congress. Well, that was just sheer joy. And I'm talk about grace in a Jubilee year. That was grace in ways I just can't even believe possible. Some of my friends, just one anecdote, called me afterwards complaining to me, why didn't tell us it was all of this we'd have come? I mean, like that complaint.
Yeah, but that's the way we complain.
Yeah. In other words, they didn't come. They hear from all their friends how amazing it was. Now they vex with themselves that they did not come. But it was that kind of event. And then Festival of Hope, which was again grace, 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 and more grace. In these 3 spaces, people found their graces in different spaces. Some people told me, I have met people I haven't seen for years in the church. And we reconnected like if it was yesterday we met.
And it was through pilgrimage.
Yes.
Through pilgrimage.
Some people in the prayer section had profound spiritual experiences like they never saw before in their life. And some through the talks, the music, and the big event. And then the learning about church and being exposed into an experience of different parts of church. It was phenomenal.
But it is good, and perhaps we could build 3 tents and stay
No,
up there.
no.
But how do we now take this back
Jerusalem.
down?
Jerusalem. So the church is in its most fragile place ever, in my knowledge of church, since I came into administration. Fragile in its finances, fragile in its numbers, fragile in how do we manage a post-COVID church. We dropped significantly since COVID. And, Pope Benedict said when he became Pope that his prophecy for the future is that the church is going to be a lot smaller, but everybody who is there are going to be conscious disciples. And they're going to be there and they'll know why they're there, as opposed to the many people who are at church, even coming, but don't even know if the Eucharist is whatever it is. So the church is smaller, it's leaner, which means that the financing of it is very, very different. And that's something that we've been consciously discerning and seeking a way of seeing and understanding. Next year, we move to mission. The whole point of synodality is mission. The whole point of Jubilee is returning to mission. And so synodality and Jubilee come together as we move back into the mission and to really touch, feel, experience what is happening and how do we invite people to discipleship in Jesus Christ.
We've had people say to us that as in this Jerusalem called Trinidad, we've lost our soul, we've lost our way. As we approach the Christmas, as we approach the new year, what can you say? What will you say? What could you say to the people of Trinidad? Not only to Catholics, but to all of us who reside on this rock called Jerusalem, Trinidad and Tobago.
I have seen more poverty, desperate poverty, in the last 2 months than I've known in this country before. I'm talking about desperate poverty. I'm talking about people who were contributing to St. Vincent de Paul and in ministry, now asking for help and food. We are in this beautiful, what I call the safest nation in the world, with all the military might around us. We don't know where that will take us. Right. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. A lot of
uncertainty there.
So we're living with very deep uncertainty, very deep anxiety with all of that. And then on top of that, we have for so many years gone on as if we could keep pushing hedonism to the extreme and there'll be no consequence. And I think we now starting to see there is a consequence for hedonism. Our young people are doing things that you and I never had temptation to do as young people. Vaping, and a whole range of other drug things that we just never had access to, never knew existed. We are challenged in morality in a very significant way. But at the same time, we've had a year of hope. And we've been pilgrims of hope for this entire year. And it's opened my eyes. And I keep telling people, you had a whole year to practice as pilgrims. Now is the time we have to become what we practice. We have to become what we practice. This is a difficult time. We're in a go-over season in so many different ways.
Many more ways than one.
In so many ways. We're in a go-over season. But that's when hope and joy springs eternal. This same year, 2025, I've heard calypsos that spoke to the soul of this nation like I have never heard before. The last time calypsos touched me this deeply was back in the 80s and 90s. What I've seen, wake up and hear the call, I mean, one after the other, marry me to the heart of Port of Spain. If I leave a bound to come again, this covenantal relationship that we need to look at between citizen and nation. And I think that we've come to a moment in our history as people of Trinidad and Tobago where we have to ask ourselves, they have nowhere we could run anymore. None of them big nations want us anymore. Going to, that's closing off. We have these 5,000 square miles that we have that's home, and it has to become our common home.
And that's a wrap on this look back at some of our big interviews for this past year. Time did not allow us to highlight every interview we did, but we want to thank all those who took the time to respond positively to our invitation to join us here on the Altos set and to help us discuss the issues which affect all of us. And we thank you, all our viewers, for your support and prayers. We look forward to being with you in 2026, but we ask you please enjoy the rest of 2025, stay safe, look forward to joining you again next year.
And yes, this is our final show for 2025, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2026 as we continue to cover and discuss the national issues that impact Trinidad and Tobago and we, the citizens of our beloved nation.
We continue to encourage you, as we do every week, to pray for Trinidad and Tobago, read your Bible, and learn your faith. Have a safe, peaceful, blessed, and faith-filled 2026, everyone.
Altos was brought to you with the kind compliments of Rituals Coffee House.